Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Russian Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu met in Beijing this week. The meeting comes at a time of heightened tensions between Russia and China on the one side and the United States and its allies on the other. Both sides are increasingly wary of what they see as attempts to contain their growing power and influence. The two officials discussed a range of issues, including the situation in Ukraine and the South China Sea. They also reaffirmed their commitment to deepening bilateral cooperation in areas such as trade, energy, and security. The meeting was widely seen as a sign of the growing strategic partnership between Russia and China. This partnership is driven by a shared perception that the United States is seeking to undermine their interests. Both countries have accused the United States of interfering in their internal affairs and of trying to stir up trouble in their neighborhoods. The concept of containment has been a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy since the Cold War. This strategy was designed to curb the influence of adversarial powers and prevent them from expanding their reach. It refers to the strategy of preventing a hostile power from expanding its influence and sphere of control. The idea was to create a buffer zone of allied nations to encircle and isolate the adversary. During the Cold War, the United States used containment to prevent the spread of communism led by the Soviet Union. This policy was implemented through various means, including military alliances, economic aid, and covert operations. Today, there is a growing sense in Moscow and Beijing that the United States is reviving this strategy against them. The geopolitical landscape has shifted, but the underlying tensions remain. They point to the U.S. military buildup in the Asia-Pacific region, which includes increased naval patrols and the establishment of new military bases, as well as its support for pro-democracy movements in countries like Ukraine and Hong Kong, as evidence of this. These actions are seen as direct challenges to Russian and Chinese influence in their respective regions. Both Russia and China view these actions as attempts to limit their growth and undermine their governments. They argue that these moves are part of a broader strategy to encircle and contain them, much like the Cold War era. They argue that the United States is clinging to a Cold War mentality and is trying to create a unipolar world order with itself at the helm. This perspective is fueled by the U.S.'s continued emphasis on its global leadership role. They believe that a multipolar world, where power is distributed more evenly, is a more just and stable system. In their view, a balanced distribution of power would lead to greater global stability and reduce the likelihood of conflicts. The debate over containment and global power dynamics continues to shape international relations, influencing policies and alliances around the world. As nations navigate this complex landscape, the echoes of the Cold War remain ever present. The relationship between Russia and China has not always been one of close cooperation. In fact, the two countries were bitter rivals for much of the 20th century. They have different political systems, economic models, and cultural values. They even fought a brief border war in 1969. However, the end of the Cold War and the emergence of the United States as the sole superpower led to a rapprochement between Moscow and Beijing. They found common ground in their shared suspicion of U.S. intentions and their desire for a more multipolar world order. Over the past 2 decades, Russia and China have steadily deepened their cooperation. They have conducted joint military exercises, coordinated their foreign policies in international forums like the United Nations, and signed a number of important economic agreements. The election of Donald Trump as President of the United States in 2016 introduced a new element of uncertainty into the relationship between the U.S., China, and Russia. Trump's America First agenda and his unpredictable foreign policy decisions made it difficult to predict how he would approach these key relationships. On the one hand, Trump's tough talk on trade with China and his withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, which Russia supported, caused tensions. However, his personal rapport with Russian President Vladimir Putin and his skepticism of traditional alliances like NATO created some opportunities for cooperation between Washington and Moscow. Trump's second term will likely continue to be characterized by this mix of confrontation and cooperation. While he has shown a willingness to work with Russia and China on some issues, he has also shown that he is not afraid to challenge them when he sees it as necessary. Section 5. Experts weigh in. A new world order in the making. The growing partnership between Russia and China has not gone unnoticed by international observers. This collaboration is seen as a significant shift in the global political landscape, with both nations seeking to challenge the existing world order dominated by Western powers. Many experts believe that this alliance has the potential to reshape global power dynamics in the 21st century. The economic and military cooperation between these two countries could create a formidable counterbalance to the influence of the United States and its allies. Some argue that it could even lead to the emergence of a new Cold War, this time between the US and its allies and a Russia-China bloc. The historical tensions and ideological differences between these powers add a layer of complexity to this evolving scenario. We are witnessing the formation of a new bipolar world order, says Dr. Alexei Arbatov, a prominent Russian political scientist. He suggests that the strategic interests of Russia and China are increasingly aligned, particularly in their opposition to Western hegemony. The United States and its allies are on one side, and Russia and China are on the other. This division is becoming more pronounced as each side seeks to expand its influence and secure its interests on the global stage. This is the defining geopolitical reality of our time. The world is witnessing a shift from a unipolar to a multipolar order, where power is distributed among several key players rather than dominated by one. Others are more cautious in their assessments. They argue that while the Russia-China partnership is significant, it is not without its challenges and limitations. They point out that the Russia-China relationship is not a true alliance, and that there are still significant differences between the two countries. Issues such as border disputes, economic competition, and differing political systems could hinder the depth and longevity of their partnership. They argue that it is too early to say whether this partnership will endure or what its ultimate impact on the global order will be. The future of international relations remains uncertain, and the actions of these key players will be crucial in shaping the world order in the years to come. Beyond containment, the growing partnership between Russia and China extends to deepening economic and military ties. This cooperation is driven by a desire to reduce their reliance on the West and to create a more balanced global economic and security architecture. Russia has become a major supplier of oil and gas to China, while China has invested heavily in infrastructure projects in Russia. The two countries are also collaborating on the development of new technologies, such as artificial intelligence and hypersonic missiles. This cooperation is likely to continue to grow in the coming years, as both countries seek to bolster their economic and military strength in a world that they see as increasingly uncertain and dangerous. Ukraine, a potential flashpoint in a new Cold War? This Eastern European nation has become a focal point of geopolitical tensions, drawing the attention of major global powers. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine is a major point of contention between Russia and the West. The struggle for control and influence in this region has led to a complex and dangerous standoff. Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its support for separatists in eastern Ukraine have been met with condemnation and sanctions from the United States and its allies. This bold move by Russia has significantly altered the geopolitical landscape. They see Russia's actions as a violation of international law and a threat to European security. The international community has rallied to support Ukraine, emphasizing the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. Russia, for its part, accuses the West of interfering in its sphere of influence and of provoking the conflict in Ukraine. Moscow argues that Western actions are destabilizing the region and infringing on its national interests. It views NATO expansion eastward as a threat to its security and has vowed to defend its interests in the region. The presence of NATO forces near its borders is seen by Russia as a direct challenge to its sovereignty. The situation in Ukraine is a potential flashpoint for a wider conflict between Russia and the West. The ongoing military standoff and the possibility of further escalation keep the world on edge. Any escalation of the conflict could have serious consequences for global security. Diplomatic efforts are continuously being made to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control, but the stakes remain high. The close relationship between Russia and China adds another layer of complexity to this already volatile situation. Their strategic partnership could influence the balance of power and further complicate international efforts to resolve the conflict peacefully. Economic sanctions have been a key tool used by the West to pressure Russia. But these measures also have global economic repercussions. The interconnected nature of the world economy means that instability in one region can have far-reaching effects. Meanwhile, the human cost of the conflict continues to rise. Thousands of lives have been lost, and many more have been displaced, creating a humanitarian crisis that demands urgent attention and action. A new era of global power challenging the US-led order. The growing partnership between Russia and China is a sign of the times. The post-Cold War era, dominated by the United States, is coming to an end. The world is becoming increasingly multipolar, with new centers of power emerging to challenge the existing order. This shift in the balance of power is likely to have a profound impact on global politics and economics in the years to come. The old rules of the game are no longer applicable. New alliances are being formed, and old rivalries are being rekindled. The world is entering a period of uncertainty and change, and the outcome of this great power competition is far from clear. The meeting between Wang Yi and Sergei Shoigu in Beijing was a testament to the growing strategic partnership between China and Russia. Driven by shared concerns about U.S. containment and a desire for a more multipolar world order, the two countries are deepening their cooperation in a range of areas, from economics to security. This alliance has the potential to reshape global power dynamics and usher in a new era of great power competition. While the future of this partnership remains to be seen, one thing is certain: the world is watching closely. The actions of these two powerful nations will have far-reaching consequences